And there's more about them in the hall, but they're an order of black nuns that was founded in the 1829, I think.
You got it with the dates.
But in
You can always Google it.
But in 1829, and I think you told me, Gaynelle, that your aunt was one of the missionaries that actually went to Texas to educate black children.
Yes. I had an aunt that, let me just give you, my aunt was a nun. My parents, my mother was not Catholic, my father was Catholic. And so I'm the oldest of 5 children. And she thought that none of us would become Catholic, and guess what I did? Became Catholic at a very young age. I wanted to go to school with the Sisters of the Holy Family. And I started with them when I was 5 years old. That's awful young, isn't it? So the play today, it was like reliving my life, in all honesty. I think I'm very fortunate to have grown up with black women. I tell everybody I went to school, an all-girls school, taught by all black women who are all Sisters of the Holy Family. And guess where I went to school? In the French Quarters. If anybody's been to New Orleans, it's on 717 Orleans Street, right behind the St. Louis Cathedral. It's called the Bourbon Orleans now. And I think the nuns still own the property, and probably leased it for like $1 or something like that. But going to school, you know, when I was looking at the different elements in the play, what comes to mind, you saw the nun cleaning the floor. Guess who did that? For the chapel. I did it by myself. Had to go and shine those polished floors. And it was quite interesting because I just thought that was normal. And then doing the linens for the chapel, etc. The beauty of it, which I think it's hard if you look at the pictures, to see all of those nuns in the chapel, in the church, praying and singing. It is a miracle, graceful, and I had the honor as a young child to be with them. I think they were trying to recruit me, but you can laugh. I do. But my nuns, it just was a very different environment. And I don't know how to explain it. It's not the same thing as, I've never been to a public school, never attended a public school. So I went to Mass every day in the St. Louis Cathedral. Can you believe that? They took us to Mass, we all lined up, we were in uniform. And it was just a different way of living. And I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, I should say that. And during the time of segregation. So we could not go to school with my kids. Being in the French Quarters, you know, I just thought that was normal. I don't think you would have a child go to school in French Quarters today because you saw all of those people that were in the bars. You know, I'll tell a story. Sister Demetria was our principal, and they called me. She would call me down to the office. Doucette, come on down. And she'd give me the box of World's Finest Chocolate. Do anybody remember those chocolate bars? And send me into the French Quarters to sell candy. You would not do that to a 6 or 7-year-old today. And what I would do is go and sell a candy in the French Quarters, collect all of this money. And I have to say the guys in suits would give me the money and I would sell the candy. They would just still be talking, take out their pocket and just give me the money and told me to keep the candy. So when I went back to school, I don't know how long I'd spent out there, but when I would go back to the office, I put the box of candy on Sister Beecher's desk, and I had a lot of money. And I was wondering why she
Never attempted to eat any of it?
No, but that goes to the younger nun. I was just obedient. And I would ask, once in a while I would ask her, can I have a bar of candy? I gave you all the money, can I at least have a bar of candy? So she would let me have one. But periodically I would do that. I'll tell another story, and if you have questions, you can probably ask me. Another story is Sister Joseph Angela was one of my teachers. She just passed away about a year or two ago. And if you know anything about New Orleans, we had a courtyard in the school. It was a private setting. And we had the stone benches. And the communion, you call them wafers now, but the communion would come in a square. And now it's probably automated. But I was the person the little girl that stamped them into the round hole, the round wafers, and then bagged them. And then she would let me eat the square after I finished it. So that was the fun part. That was the fun part. The other story I'll tell you, because the memories, in all honesty, watching the play is the second time. Not only did I have tears in my eyes, but the memories come flooding back in terms of life and living. And keep in mind, I was there from 5 till I was 16, 17 years old with the nuns. And they also lived on the property. The students, the nuns had a laundry. So every once in a while they called me to go work in the laundry. Now, they didn't ask every student to do this. It was myself and maybe Tessie, my friend Tessie. But most often it was me. Now, I'll date myself because they had a mango. Do you know what a mango is? Yeah, an iron. Yeah. That big, and it was probably longer than this row of seats. And I had to run all the clothes through the iron and then fold it. And at the time, the nuns had a number, a little tiny number in the corner of their clothes. They had to be folded neatly and in order and then placed together. And then I had to place it in the laundry basket and then take it up to their houses, their dorm rooms. It was just, that was a way of life and living. And all those memories came flooding back, watching and listening to the nuns. I was probably the only one that was allowed to go in the chapel with them to pray and sing, because they always recruited me to work. I was probably the only child that they called me to set. I'd be in the middle of the class, like sitting in there, and one of the nuns would come in and stand in front of the whole class. Doucette, come on out, we need you. And then take me to do the work. They needed someone that they could count on to do the work, do it quietly, and get it done.
So since you were so involved and invested, did you ever think that you would follow them and
that's the other story. I did want to become a nun. But I did not want to be a teaching nun. This was mostly a teaching profession, and I really wanted to travel overseas. And at that time, you can only join the sisters that were black. You couldn't join a variety of orders. So I never became a nun. But I did want to become one.
And then you became a teacher.
Yeah, that's another story. When I graduated from St. Mary's in high school, I wanted to become a nun. So I talked to my mom, who was not Catholic. And she was a humble woman, very Christian woman. She was Lutheran. And she said to me, never raised her voice, she says to me, Gaynelle, she said, this is what I think you should do. If you go to college and you decide when you graduate from college you want to become a nun, you can do that. She never told me no. Wise woman, wasn't it? And I wanted to become a biochemist, so I studied biology. And later on changed and became, when I graduated, she wanted me to be a teacher, and that's how I became a teacher, because my mother was a teacher and she wanted me to become one. And it turned out that was obedience, listening to your parents. So I became a teacher. When I graduated from college, that's the first job I got. Matter of fact, it was at a Catholic school, believe it or not. They recruited me, and right here in Rochester, New York. So I got married quite young.
Wow. So. And you've been a principal of Catholic schools?
Yes, principal of a Catholic school, St. Monica's on Genesee Street.
Wow.
And that was a whole other interesting story. You won't tell anybody I said that, but he's taping. They called me into the bishop's office. There was 7 of them sitting around the table. And I was told I had 6 months to turn the school around. Imagine telling that to a young person. You have 6 months to turn the school around, or we're going to close it in 6 months. I said, okay. Sister Mary Ellen was running an institution at that time. It was a lot of work at that time. It was 1983. And she had a bingo. Oh God, you know about bingo, don't you guys? Okay. So what I did was to, the bingo, and I don't mind telling, the bingo was making like only $12,000, $15,000. So I and the church was running it. So I was like, okay, I recruited parents, I trained the parents, and started the bingo. The bingo went from 17,000 to 25,000 in 1 year, which means we had enough money to keep the school open. In addition to that, I knew we needed more money, so I was trying to raise, this is the story of the priest. Waited till the priests go on vacation. They usually go on vacation like in January after the holidays. Waited till then. Norm was his name, a couple. He was helping with the bingo, and he helped me fill out the paperwork. And we started 2 bingos while the priest was away. So when he came back, when the bingo was already running, and he could tell me no. How's that? And
Not so obedient anymore.
Probably not. But the school needed, and it empowered the parents. It empowered the community. The school was about 95% non-Catholic and Black. And one of the things I did was to write to the Black bishops at the time. They asked them to send me a picture of them. And I put the pictures up in the school so the children can see what holiness looked like, other than being white. And one of the things I did was put up a Black Jesus. Well, that went over big. Matter of fact, when I think about it and all these memories start to flood, they were thinking about excommunicating me because I put a Black Jesus up. I says, go right ahead, I've been thrown out of better places. But when you start to change an environment to be more inclusive and to change a life, it's challenging. And I think that people didn't realize I was Black and I'm Catholic. Being Catholic is in my DNA. That's all I can say. And I've been a pastoral associate, run the church, know how to run the church, etc. And I think that most of my family is non-Catholic. And one of the things I think is that the Catholic Church, and I'm proselytizing at this point, the Catholic Church has the gospel mission to help everyone and to all souls. And I think that we have missed that message. You don't have to be Catholic to believe in it, but you do have to be Catholic to help other people. And I think that's extremely important. And I hope that over my life that I've been able to do that. And that's why I've continued the work at Baden Street where I am. My mother and I grew up, I said, in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I tell everybody, which I learned from Mark Morial, he was the mayor of New Orleans. He was my neighbor, like right across the street. But New Orleans, the Pontchartrain Park in New Orleans is the first and only, I think, designated for the Black middle-class community in the United States of America. Can you imagine that? And it designated that. So I grew up with doctors, lawyers, judges. My father worked for the federal government. So in terms of, so I knew about the Treasury Department and things like that. Most children don't know those things, and people don't know in terms of the work and the effort that many Black men and women did. I grew up with teachers. So it's it breaks my heart in a lot of ways because people don't know that. And at the same time, I do try to share that story. Right. I just started talking.
One of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, especially with the original Sister Act, she was a fish out of water because she was black, but there were black nuns, and black nuns, I mean, the order that the whole Sisters of the Holy Family was a second in the United States. The first was in Baltimore, Maryland.
That's correct, with the open.
Right, and that was, I think that was 1829, and I got it wrong.
That's okay.
Sisters of the Holy Family was 1837. But when you have a legacy like that, it's important to, beyond the fun and entertainment of this play, which is beautiful, to, you know, kind of talk about the fact that there are black nuns, and while she might have been a fish out of water in this story, there's a legacy that's being built on. And I found it very interesting, unlike the movie, the director's choice to make the Mother Superior also black. I think it changes the dynamics in very interesting ways. I wonder, did you note that?
I did, and she sounded just like me when I was a principal, sorry. She did. I was like, oh my God, that sounded just like me. And I say that to you because I'm a devoted person who says her rosary, my novenas. I mean, that's missing today, the novenas to the saints, etc. And one of the things, I'll tell you a funny story about myself though, when teaching or whatever, whether I was at the college or whatever, my favorite saying, instead of cursing, I would say, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and all the saints. Really? And so sometimes I would say, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and then I hear an echo voice, Miss Wethers, you forgot and all the saints. But the kids really can pick that up in terms of modeling and really other ways of communicating. But I also will share with you that, you know, I'll tell a story of my cousin because it just kind of reflected. She was dying of cancer. She was in the 60s and not Catholic. And she called me and she says, Gaynelle, she said to me, what's the saint I would pray to for cancer? And why I use that story is because I get people who are non-Catholic and Catholics who call me and say, I need a saint to pray to. And who is? I have to say this to you, when St. Jude was one of my favorite. He's still on my dresser at home, and I say novenas to him all the time. When I travel to New Orleans, I'm kind of rambling all over because they all are kind of popping at me. There's a saint, because people would call me, they'd be depressed or upset about things. And the Saint Diphnah, I was in New Orleans and I was at one of the cathedrals and churches. And they have the open doors, so you go one side and you leave to go the chapels here and you go to the other side. And I went to something told me to go to the other side, and there she was, Saint Diphnah. And so she's one of the other saints that I pray to. So, and then also Saint Francis for pets. I had my pets go to the mass to get blessed, etc. So there are a lot of saints that are ordinary people like you sitting out here who are gifted and have a mission. You have people who St. Luke gifted, the physician with the hands. And so we forget that the people in the Bible and the saints were ordinary people just like yourselves.
I want to build on that because we have a few more minutes, but then we've got to wrap. One of the things that struck me about the play and the musical is this whole idea that people can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
And do you have any examples of when you, as a devout Catholic, have been able to learn from somebody who's not a devout Catholic, and also, but not through faith, but through whatever spiritual or giving or human perspective that they have?
Oh, absolutely.
And I just think that that's one of those parts. Certainly the Mother Superior learned from Dolores Van Cartier,
Yes.
and vice versa.
Well, I have a couple stories, but I'll say this to you so it kind of pops in my head and I won't have an intellectual interruption. But our religion that we choose interferes with us getting to our spirituality. Think about that. And because of the rules. But I am an institutional person and I do follow rules and regulations. The other thing I think is important is that I learned to pray differently from other people. One of the things I told you, I said my rosaries, I said my novenas, and one time there was a period I was having a hard time just trying to read through the novenas and get through them, and then they weren't having them at church, etc. And I forgot who it was, but the person said to me, Gaynelle, why don't you just sit down and talk to God? Duh. And so when my children were younger and I'd get up at 5:30 in the morning, put the coffee on, etc., that was the time I would say my devotions. But I learned to have a conversation with God over my cup of coffee. And I sounded like the Mother Superior because one morning, I was getting to deal, and I did today before I came here, got a call to help with a problem with immigration with the family, and how do I get to, it was complicated. I won't explain it to you, but I get calls like that. My husband hears me. But what I say to you is that I sat down and I drank the cup of coffee and I put my hand on my hand. I said, God, can you find a new friend? Because you get these cases, at least I did, to try and help someone get a better life, find resources that they need. And I think living in this world and the challenges that we face are challenging for each and every one of us, but some of us have a little bit more than others. So I still like to say that I learned to pray differently through someone else who's not Catholic. And that's just to sit down and have a conversation like you are and I, and that's what I would do in the morning. And I do that in my car. I say my rosaries in my car, and when I can't, I'll just talk to God and tell him what I think. He does answer me. I don't always like his answers, like the nun.
So the last question about music. Was the music in your church more like the music that was before Sister or Dolores Van Cartier came, or was it more like the music that she came to know was at the convent?
Well, let me just say this to you. I think the music was more solemn and graceful because they were all nuns. And matter of fact, my music teacher was Sister Marie Concilia, and she's still alive, I have to tell you that. And I did see them about a couple of years ago because I took school number 9 to New Orleans, the teachers there, and I introduced them to the students in the all-girls school and the Catholic school. But I will say to you, when I was a pastoral associate, I had a youth choir. And of course the singing was kind of normal until I introduced the youth choir. And I had about 4 or 5 kids in the choir, and they started singing like the nuns, and I'm like, Gaynelle, what have you done to this church? Because it brought it alive. And people need to feel the spirit. And they need to be able to feel, music does that. The body starts moving, your feet start tapping, just like the priest. And that's what began to happen. So I have a combination of both. There are times when I need to be with the nuns and just be quiet and prayerful, and just get back into that zone. And there are other times when I need the lift. So maybe I'm strange that way, but I kind of need both.
Thank you, Gaynelle.
Do you have any questions of me? Comments? No one has grown up the way I did, and I realized that today in the audience and listening to the program, not even my own children, to have that experience and I got tears in my eyes, with all women. Think about my entire formation of my life every day. The laundry, I'm just talking about not just the schoolwork, but the laundry, the being with them, the having to eat with them. Not everybody can eat with them. There only was selected few. And I mentioned Tessie because she's the only friend of mine that became a nun after we graduated. She did not remain in the convent. But I'll mention one more story. Sister Cynthia Marie was my biology teacher. She reminded me a couple of stories. You know, I did an experiment with rats, the white mice, and the vitamin deficiency. Well, they got out of the cage, and she reminded me that they were running around the classroom. We had to go find them. But the beauty of my seeing her a couple of years ago, and the nuns that taught me, and the relationship we had was special.
Did you board with them?
No, we did have boarding students. At the time, people were sending their children to boarding school, but we did have a boarding school. And I think I got involved because I lived there in New Orleans, and they needed help, and so I would be there. Some of my friends did board there. As a matter of fact, coming to this play reminded me of some of the names of the students I went to school, so I started looking them up on Facebook. But, you know, I just think that that was such a special time in my life that I'll never forget. And I wish others would have had that experience.